Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast. This is Leadership Talks with Ratiba Mohale. And today I have an amazing guest, and I'm excited for this conversation. And I've been looking forward to it. Hello, Andy, and welcome to the Leadership Talks with Ratiba. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm also excited to be here. I'm doing very well, thank you. And how are you?
I've been good. I've been good as well. The day was a bit hectic, but I mean, I guess it's the stress that comes with the job. But yeah, here we are. I was just, in my head, like, I'm ready. I need to talk to her today and get on this conversation. So that was exciting for me. So yeah, so welcome. And to those who don't know who Andiswa Mojapelo is, and you can hear, the name and the surname are like, um, so can you please tell us about yourself and what you do?
Okay, cool. A little bit about myself is Andiswa was born in the Eastern Cape,
Mm.
in a small town in the Eastern Cape called Ebizana. And I then moved to Durban, KZN Durban, when I was about 4 or 5 years old. So I
Oh,
spent most of my life there, actually.
wow, when
um, I grew up in a small town called Chatsworth in Durban.
interesting. Yeah.
And I literally, my preschool, primary school, and high school were on the same road. So I lived at the end of the road, and I went to preschool was the first, and then up the road shortly after that was my primary school. Up the road after that was my high school. So
Wow.
I just walked that street most of my life. And yeah, that was me. Grew up in Chatsworth, and then after completing my matric, I went to study at UKZN Westville campus. Shout
Woo-hoo.
out.
Shout out.
Um, Shout out to Westville campus. And then after that, I already knew by then that I wanted to pursue my career in Johannesburg. So I was very intentional
Mm.
about that from high school, that I will study on the KZN side, but I do want to go to Johannesburg to build my career. So fortunately, I got an opportunity straight after graduating, and I moved to Johannesburg. And I think it's been about what, 6 or 7 years now. And
Ooh.
that's my background.
Mm.
I started from a career perspective in the investments and stockbroking environment, and then I moved into your more financial planning, holistic financial planning, very
Mm.
aligned to my passion as well, which is financial literacy. Profession-wise, I am the head of client success at a financial services provider.
Mm.
My passion is very closely aligned to that. I call myself a financial literacy advocate, and that's because I really advocate and I'm passionate about people learning how to use their money, and learning how to navigate the financial world, to achieve their goals as well as the life that they would like to live.
Mm.
So I also do a lot of content creation, speaking engagements, and advocating around financial literacy while
Mm.
doing my 9 to 5, which I'm fortunate is very aligned to what I do. That
Mm.
is Andiswa in a nutshell. And to close the introduction, the comment earlier about my name and surname. So I was originally Andiswa Kwahu,
Wow.
from the Eastern Cape, and then I married into the Mojapelo family.
Welcome to Limpopo. We have won. Yeah, no, exciting.
Another one.
Yeah, I didn't know that you went to Westville campus because I was there since 2015. So I started Westville in 2015. When did you leave Westville campus?
I left in 2015. How interesting.
Interesting. Wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
I was
I
there
was,
from
yeah.
2012 to 2015. So you missed me.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Because I was in 2014, I was in PMB. And then 2015, I came down to Devon to Westville. So I did my first in PMB and then I came down to,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay,
interesting.
okay.
Wow.
Cool.
I think I saw that. I was like, oh, she went to UKZN. Wow. How nice. So that was, interesting one. UKZN alumni, unite. Oh, thank you so much. So yeah, today we're gonna be talking about an interesting topic, um, leading millennial generation, and I think we are in that generation where they're dominating the workspace. Both the millennials and the Gen Zs as well are dominating the workspace. and maybe there's a cultural shift that is happening. There's a lot of things that are happening in the corporate. So yeah, maybe just to hear from you, what does leadership mean to you? When you hear the word leadership, what comes to your mind?
Sure. A lot of things come to my mind, but I think maybe let me start with what I thought leadership was.
Mm,
So I from my understanding had initially thought of leadership living very closely to or even being the same thing as management
mm,
initially. And that's because I was of the understanding, or rather, my experience showed me that you get into the corporate space, you work a couple of years, and then you become a senior. And after that, the next thing is you lead a team, and then you become a manager, and then you become a leader. So for me, leadership lived in the management space, and I believe that for a very long time. And I
mm,
think it's important, even in explaining what I feel like leadership is, to start, but what I believe leadership is not.
mm.
And I don't think it's the same thing as management. And I think
Yes.
often leaders are given the responsibility of a manager, which is understandable because of limited resources. You can't really have certain people doing a few things and others a lot. So it's mostly one and the same thing. But
Mm,
management is more about managing processes. It's a
yes.
very tangible exercise. It's something where you're managing processes, directing people to achieve a specific goal. You can measure that. It's very direct. The focus is clear. Whereas leadership for me is more about coaching.
Mm,
It's more about being a visionary. It's
yes.
about prioritizing relationships and
Mm,
people and rallying them towards a cause.
mm,
Um, it's more about helping people become better in general.
mm,
And a byproduct of that is then them helping you achieve what you want to achieve, which leads to results. But
mm,
it's more in the softest space, for the lack of a better word. That's what leadership is to me. It's being a visionary, it's impact, it's relationships, and it's truly centered around people.
mm,
Whereas management is more tangible results, specific targets, process, and people to achieve something specific. Yeah, that's what leadership
mm.
is to me.
No, very interesting distinction there. So would you say that leadership it begins at a relationship and also maybe having the genuine love for whoever that you are helping out to make sure that they are putting out your vision together to be a success? Would you say it's something that starts from a relationship point of view, or what's your take on that?
I think it definitely starts from a relationship point of view. Your leadership is so people-centered.
Yes.
Uh, and it's so people-centered, which is why the relationship element of it comes across so strongly. There's
Mm,
something that I once read, which I feel like resonates so well with what we're talking about now. And it said that there are 5 levels of leadership, right? I think John Maxwell is the one who coined these terms. And he said that in the first ground level of leadership is position. And
yes.
he says that that's when people have to follow you based on the role that you have,
Mm,
right? That's where it starts. And then the last of that 5 is actually personal. Um,
mm,
it's personalized in the sense that people now follow you because of who you are and how you treat them and what you've done for them. So you see how it moves from something being very position and person directed, like you have to
mm,
follow me because I've been appointed. That's the ground level surface stuff. But the
yes.
real stuff begins when people are now rallying behind you because you've got a good relationship with them, because they believe in
Mm,
your cause, and because they believe in who you are as an individual. And for me, you can't achieve stuff like that if you don't build relationships with people and if you don't prioritize the important role that people actually play in your cause.
mm. Sure. And this, I think, this ties together with what we're talking about today in terms of the millennial generation. Um, Maybe to expand, what do you understand about the millennial generation? And also, I think you and me are part of that generation and also the new generation. When you talk about people following you because of what you've done to them, how you make them feel and what they believe around you and how you have built the relationship with them. And when you see the workspace right now, it's dominated by these two generations, the millennials and also the Gen Zs, and they have a lot of demands, right?
Correct.
So yes, in some of those demands that they have, do you think is maybe the generation being selfish, or they're right in their demands, or it's a culture shift in terms of what the corporate is being and what the generation requires, which forces the institutions to change?
You mentioned that we are also part of that millennial
Generation.
generation group. And I always ask myself if that makes things better or worse to lead millennials. Does,
Yeah.
does the fact that I relate and I understand where millennials are coming from, because I'm a millennial myself, does that give me an added advantage in managing and leading millennials and Gen Zs because I'm
Mm,
sort of closer to them from a generation perspective?
mm,
Or is it actually a disadvantage?
mm.
Because you are then a peer, right?
Yeah.
You and I are homeboys and homegirls, and we come from the same. So I don't know. I'm still pondering on whether that's an advantage or disadvantage. But what I can say is it's definitely different. And I
Mm,
think these age generations always interest me because I always feel like there should be a second layer within the group. I think
mm.
there's different types of millennials. I
Interesting, yeah.
think the millennials who are a bit older than the younger ones, I think there's a distinct difference, or rather, I've noticed in my interactions that our millennials and the millennials that are closer to the Gen Zs are definitely different,
Yes.
quite different, actually, almost like there should be a second layer, like I said.
Mm,
But what has been my experience? Sure, I always like to comment on things using practical examples because I feel like it's always easier to understand and to
yeah.
comprehend. So joined the workforce,
Mm,
when I joined the workforce and I started working, I had a corporate personality and a professional personality for work, right?
yes. Yes.
So I had my own personality, the type of individual that I was at home. And then I had the type of individual that I was in the corporate environment. Who determined what
Shoo.
that individual was and had to be
Yo.
is a story for another day. But I was taught, that this is how you behave at work. This is how you present yourself. These are the questions you ask. These are the ones you're not taught, and also just from external experience. So when I walked into the office, there's a hat that I would wear to show up for the office. And then examples would be that hat would be less emotional, as an
Shoo.
example.
Mm,
Um, and that hat would be less vocal. Again, I'm not saying whether this was right or wrong, but I'm just
mm.
talking about my experience. That hat would be less vocal, it would be less emotional, it would be more professional. Someone said in a study group the other day, who defined professional anyway? Who defines what's
Shoo.
professional or not?
What does it
But I would
look
wear my
like?
yes, I would wear my professional hat and I would go into the workplace. And then when I go home, I would take off my professional hat and I'll be at home and be more like myself, more vibrant, more expressive, and all of those things. And what I've found, speaking to the differences about this generation, is that they don't have different hats.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what you see is what you
But you,
get and
yes.
what you experience. They don't have I'm at work now, I'm at home now, I'm with my friends now, I'm with people I know, or I'm with people in the professional environment. They truly show up as themselves. And I think that
Mm,
has been a big thing for me to adjust to, because that's not the school of thought that I come from and what
yes.
I've experienced. And it's been an interesting journey, to be honest, because it has advantages and it has disadvantages. Disadvantages in the sense that I do think, there are ways to communicate, and there is a certain level of professionalism that's expected in the environment. But
Yes.
at the same time, on the flip side, it's also really good to get an individual's core, like who they really are, their
Mm,
authentic selves, because then they express themselves beyond the call of duty, which means you're getting creative ideas, you're getting flexibility, you're getting your all, you're getting an individual's all, and they're pouring in with their heart and soul into a cause
yes.
or a vision, which is great. But at the same time, I think in the more formal environments, then some guidance is needed along those lines.
Sure. That's very interesting. And I like the fact that you say that they don't have, I like the distinction that you made, and also saying that they don't have different hats. They come as who they are inside and outside. So would you say also come from the school of thought that you come from? Would you say that the corporate in itself has its own school of thought that maybe requires people to be less of themselves and be more of rigid to what the system is, and maybe the generation is giving a culture shock to the system that is the corporate and how they behave.
I agree. I think we always flight or fight when it comes to change.
Mm,
Anything that is unfamiliar, the reaction is never great. I think we all like our routines. We all like what we used to. We all like what we are familiar with. And at any time when someone tries to challenge or even change that, people get scared. And it's either
mm,
they play avoiding or they try to be defensive or stuff like that. So I think it has had an impact. But I've been challenging myself on this whole professional, what we are used to idea and narrative, because like I hinted earlier, or like I mentioned
mm,
earlier, I attended this leadership course, and the individual facilitating it asked a very simple question, but the leaders in the room, including myself, couldn't really answer it.
mm,
But she said, who everybody talks about being professional. Who defined this word?
mm,
Who who sat you down and told you that this is what professional mannerisms mean, or this is what professional, dress code means, or this is unprofessional and this is not. And we couldn't really remember who told us or which textbook. It was just
yes.
opinion based. It was something that was formed
Mm,
by our own thinking. So I grew up like this, and then I tell Ratiba, and he knows, and then he tells the next person, and it sort of becomes a thing. But and I think in her asking us that question, it was just to make us think about the norms that we grew up with that may have made sense then, but don't now.
mm,
Um, and to realize that we do need to challenge ourselves, to be honest. And now we are forced to, especially with other generations. So I've
yeah.
had to think about that, and it's made me think a bit differently. But I think we are scared of change because this is what we used to. This is our way of doing things. This is our school of thought, and it came from years of whatever. But I've been challenging myself, and I hope other people do too, because it's not
Mm,
easy, but there are great advantages in thinking differently, and there are great advantages in being challenged. Because you don't grow from people just coloring in between the lines and not coloring out and not thinking out of the box and not challenging things or questioning things. You end up just doing exactly the same things, getting the same results. But I think when you open a space, whether it's in the way that you carry yourself professionally, or it's in the conversations you allow, or you remove the hierarchy, whatever it is that you
mm,
do, you're not only enabling people to be more comfortable and to feel safer, but you also, in a way, opening up the opportunity to tap into their out of the box. And
mm,
that's what I think us as leaders and also organizations need to think about, that it's a give and take, right? So I can't expect you, as I lead you, to be rigid, to be formal, to be boxed, to be all of these things, and then expect you to be innovative and
yeah.
challenging and thinking about crazy ideas that are going to take us far. It's me being accommodating of you as a person and allowing you to color beyond the lines and allowing you to think that's actually going to create the kind of environment that will give me the innovation that I need. I think sometimes we want the box, but we want out of the box ideas, but people must do this in the box. So
Mm,
yeah, I think we must also be fair in what we're willing to change and give out for those results.
Yeah, so I think you can engage me on this. I'm thinking about this while you're talking that it's in terms of who define what professionalism is, you know. And I think maybe when we rope in new people into the company, we miss an opportunity to actually educate and also say, no, be yourself, because we say there's something called culture, right? The culture that you create in the company or in organization that you have. And anyone who comes
Mm.
in, we want them to join in into the culture. If here we wear suits, we wear suits. If here we do this, you do that. But we're not finding out who that person is and can they bring themselves. Maybe they'll add flavor into how we wear the
Yes.
suits and they add a flower on it, something by actually coming in and being themselves. Do you think we are missing an opportunity there in actually engaging and letting people come into that culture that we have created as themselves and they're able to add the flavor into the culture?
I think so. And I think we also, to your question of saying that you just thinking that when people join the organization, maybe we should have such conversations. I think we also leave a lot to open interpretation and to assumptions,
Mm,
especially when people join organizations or when people rally behind a cause. We don't have the conversations. There's a lot going around that we think, they should know.
mm,
It's a no-brainer. Everybody knows this, but people don't.
mm,
And I've had to learn that, especially with individuals, dealing with individuals who are straight out of university, for example, and helping them navigate the corporate space and the corporate culture. We often assume that this is a no-brainer. Everybody knows this. They'll pick up or they'll read in between the lines, but that's not true. You need to,
mm,
number one, have more of these conversations. What is our culture? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Yes, people will experience it if we're doing it right, but we also need to have the conversation. And like you said, also open up the floor to be like, what
mm.
are your values? What
Yes.
do you believe in?
Mm,
And how does it align with the cause that we are trying to achieve? I think employee buy-in, and people buy-in in any cause actually is
mm,
so powerful. And I think that's why leadership is such a powerful tool,
yeah.
because if you are leading right, you have got people who are honestly giving their all to your cause. That's a very big
Mm,
responsibility.
mm,
That is a very, very big responsibility. And I say this not because I'm a leader, but I say
mm.
this because that's the relationship I have with my leader.
Yes.
I have a relationship with my leader where if he comes and he says, Andiswa, this is the vision, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is what I need from you. You best believe that I'm rallying up every resource, every effort, every talent I have to try and bring that vision to fruition. So you see the weight that he carries sitting where
Mm,
he is, that if he brings about a vision, he's got an individual like Andiswa who's ready to back him, and what
mm,
he's trying to achieve. And I think it's a huge responsibility, one that we have to be very careful with. But I
mm.
think if we understand it, and most importantly, if we respect it, it does carry a lot of weight. And I think we can do amazing things, absolutely amazing things with leadership if we just carry it right.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think I often say that we mustn't move away from being human. I think that human touch that we have,
Mm-hmm.
because I said last week when I was having a conversation with someone and say that we are more human outside with our families and our friends, but when we come to work as leaders or as leaders in the corporate, we are now living the human touch that we have, the kindness that we have with our families and friends, and we become different people in the corporate. And now you must have a straight face. Now you must not show emotions and all that. And people now are more scared of you. But outside, we see you laughing with everyone, you know. But when you're with
Mm-hmm.
you in the space and we are people who are following you, you are a different person, you know. How is that? Maybe it might touch on something you mentioned earlier about the school of thought. And this is a question I want to ask. Do you think that generation that had a different type of school of thought have struggled to transition to what this generation requires from them and what type of leadership it requires in this time?
So I have this thing that I like saying in conversations about leadership, and I say the problem is being kind is not on the KPIs.
Yes, yes.
Um, and I honestly say that lightly, but I really believe that being kind should be a KPI.
Yeah.
And until it's easy to say that we need to bring the human into organization, we need to bring the emotion and the empathy into organizations, but so long as it's not on the KPIs and not on anything that, in inverted commas, matters, then it's almost like we're singing something, but we're doing something else. So being kind should be a KPI. And what I mean by that is it's something that we should be having crucial conversations around, that this organization believes in kindness, it believes in empathy, it believes in understanding, and it believes in leading with integrity. And then we be more vocal about that, like we are about the key sales results, the turnover,
Mm.
how much new business we need to bring, and all of those things. And up until we hold conversations like this to the same level as we do targets and key KPIs, I think it's going to be very difficult to align that to. Bringing it all back to this generation, it's going to be very difficult to remove the humanness and expect this generation to participate and to
Mm.
conform. Because we ask why. We want to know your
Everything.
why, and we want to connect to your
Yes,
why.
yes,
And we also, some of us don't mind getting a little less, but rallying behind a cause, which is something that's shocking for this society and
yes,
this century that we're in. That, oh my God, is money not enough? No, I'm actually not going to take a job offer because I don't believe in your company's values.
yes.
I don't align with what they're trying to achieve. And to our
Yeah,
parents and people before that, it's like, oh, what? Did you just decline a job offer because it's not aligned? Yes, because my values are important to me. Now I want to be very careful in saying that, and put a disclaimer and say I understand that being able to do stuff like that is a privilege.
mm-hmm.
And it's because of the space that we find ourselves in now. So in the
Mm-hmm.
older generations, most of them didn't have a choice, especially when I speak about our parents. They
Yeah.
didn't have a choice and they didn't have a voice. So they had to do what they had to do to bring us to a position where we now have more of a choice. And because
Mm.
we do in this generation, it is going to be important for organizations to start thinking a bit harder about
Mm.
what they stand for, what the values are, what the level and extent of those values are, how they identify with that individual. And I really think that it's the organizations with a strong why
Yes,
and
yes.
a really impactful leadership that are going to be successful
Mm.
going into the future. Because something that's a recurring theme in our generation is we need to connect to something. And that's why you find non-traditional businesses thriving. And then people are
Yes,
asking themselves, but they don't have the advertising budget, they don't have the marketing budget. They like, how are they? The turnover is, but that's a startup. It makes no, it's a startup, yes, it doesn't have the budget, but it has a strong cause
yes.
that is connecting with people beyond what your big organization with the budget can do. And I think people are gonna, as we have more resources, it's gonna give us more choice and more options. And as that happens, I think organizations that want to retain good quality talent are going to have to compete beyond remuneration.
Mm.
They're going to have to really invest in a strong why and connect that way. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to grow.
Yeah. No, I think this conversation, it's very interesting, and I want us to continue. So we're gonna do a part two recording. So I'm seeing
No
that,
worries.
yes, I'm seeing that we've got 5 minutes left. So I'm just gonna
Cool.
cut it, and then we restart again, and then we carry on the conversation. So we'll have two episodes that will air out on our podcast. So the part one and then the part two as well. So
Sure, no problem.
yeah, so I'm gonna stop the recording and then end it, and then we can connect to the same link again and continue.
Okay, cool.
Empowerment Podcast. Inspire, equip, and empower.